Hey everyone, how's it going? Hope you're all doing well, as I always say. And this week I got some pretty crazy stories for you. These are all from the Philippines. So pull up a stump, and yeah, thank you for watching. Let's jump into it. Outside of the cities, people here treat superstition as a part of everyday life, with witch doctors, the legit ones anyways, are on the same standing as actual medical practitioners, and encounters with, quote, monsters are treated as an unfortunate but inevitable fact of life. So I was 8 years old and we were obviously in the Philippines. We live in this rural town that's at the foot of a mountain range that spans the length of an island that we live on. The neighborhood where we live in is right next to the town center. This neighborhood is holding a basketball tournament in the street. It's like a mini fiesta, almost, with everyone turning out to watch it. So, our neighbor just gave birth and is staying behind to watch her infant son. Her house is basically a bamboo hut, which is raised up on stilts, with space underneath which is usually left open and used for like storage or what have you. At one point, she heads to the bedroom to check on her kid, and she sees a long, hairy arm poking up through the floorboards. These huts usually only have a single layer of bamboo planks as flooring, and is trying to reach the baby's crib. The neighbor screams, everyone outside hears her, and her husbands and relatives all rush toward the hut. The arm darts back under the floorboards, and several people see a large black dog-looking thing bolt from under the hut, running towards the town outskirts. It's a legit, honest-to-God Aswang. The neighborhood cancels the basketball tournament and organizes an impromptu armed watch for the next 2 weeks, since Aswangs are known to stick around and wait for their prey to become vulnerable. The police station just a few blocks away officially does not endorse superstition-induced hysteria, but they quietly do step up the road patrol for the duration of the search. This goes on until the neighborhood felt that they had discouraged the Aswang from pursuing the child further. For context, an Aswang is similar to a Native American skinwalker, and that they are people who use black magic to shapeshift into monstrous versions of animals like dogs, birds, boars. By day, they are often described as old and wrinkled people living alone in isolated shacks in the jungle. But at night, they take on the forms of black animals to hunt. They have a taste for offal like the livers of women and children, and are known to stalk chosen prey over a period of days or even weeks. While they are more often than not loners who voluntarily turn into shapeshifting monsters, it's not unheard of for them to turn unknowing victims, usually strangers and drifters, into more Aswangs, usually by offering the stranger food or drink that has been laced with their saliva in a process called yangaw. If this food or drink is consumed, the victim will slowly gain an appetite for increasingly strange meats until they lose control of themselves and consume human flesh, at which point they will become a full-fledged Aswang. The process can be reversed by a medicine man or albulario. This is, of course, as long as the victim hasn't consumed human flesh yet, for after that, there's not much anybody can do. They've been around a long time, with an official account during Magellan's arrival in the Philippines that recorded an incident of an Aswang stalking. Despite being described as stronger than normal men, they can be killed by bullets and steel, in addition to charmed and blessed weaponry, though it's recommended that they should be confronted while in their human form, as they lack the superhuman strength during the day. I'm a guy that lives in the Philippines and has done so for a long time. I moved here from a young age and migrated to the southern island of Mindanao. I ended up moving away again right before you-know-what came to the UK, but I used to live in a major city called Davao. I've got a few stories from there that centers a lot around the spirits and a couple on a few folk beasts, so this happened when I was a kid. So at this point in my childhood, we were living in a hut called a bahe kubo. My dad was a seaman, so he wasn't around a whole lot, and he was saving up money for us to build a house. So I was the oldest with my little sister on the way, and I was sleeping with my mom in one room, with my grandparents in another. It's monsoon season, so I'm absolutely freezing my balls off in hand-me-down clothes. I can't sleep, so I try to read most of the night by the candle. Keep in mind, we had clocks and phones, we just couldn't really afford much else in the way of anything when, again, my dad was saving up to build us a house. So the area is grassy, there's dirt roads, but it's a kilometer away from the highway at most, with other huts around us. It's really late and I'm yelled at to go to sleep. So the lights are all off, the candles are blown out, and I try to doze off, but I can't because I feel really weird. I feel like I'm being watched or something. We don't have any glass windows, it's just window holes in the hut. And there's like a rustling on the opposite side of the house. And it leads onto the roof where I absolutely crap my pants over the following noise. It's like somebody was trying to copy a bird in a high-pitched kinda whook, whook, kinda like a chicken, but it was kinda quiet. And within seconds I hear my grandparents' room shake and our door opens to my granddad, Lolo, we call him. He's carrying a big sword made out of a stingray's tail, and next to him, my Lola, grandmother, holding garlic. She hangs it from the window, and my mom is now stressed out. She tells her there's a wak-wak on our roof. Basically, it's like a Filipino bird vampire that enjoys eating babies, children, and even adults. It uses talons in its beak to tear apart your flesh and consume your heart and other organs. Only now I just realized that Lolo isn't holding garlic. He's holding a sawed-off shotgun in his other hand. Lolo runs out, screaming and swearing. Lola comforts my mother and me and just tries to keep us inside. Our neighbors wake up and we see a flashlight rays through the hut walls and the window. I hear the gun go off and there's these huge wings. It sounds like a giant bird took off from above. Now, it shook the house, but these houses are built to stand up to actual storms. As I said, this is monsoon season. Lola sits with us and makes us pray until Lolo comes back in the house. He tells us to go to sleep and that he'll hunt it in the morning. The next morning, me and my mom are kept inside again. Apparently when a wak-wak is near or hunting, it's a witch's familiar or a pet. So more or less people think someone who is jealous of us or disliked us enough tried to have us killed. And all this was happening when I was just a kid. And a few days later, we had a really nice dinner with my grandparents. Lolo was happy. He gets us a whole lechon, which is like a roasted baby piglet. It's so crunchy and fatty and delicious. My family prays and then eats like crazy. It almost feels like I never gained any childhood trauma. Lolo tells us that they killed a woman today who was the witch. She had familiars in her jars, including a wak-wak and black eggs. These black eggs are commonly what Manananggal or Aswangs feed to people conspicuously to turn them into one as well. Usually by destroying these eggs a certain way, you kill them. Or in the case of Manananggals, you put salt in their lower half so they can't join back together. And I feel bad for them killing some woman. It turns out that she had a crush on my dad and went crazy trying to kill my family with black magic. And all this was probably not legal, obviously, but that's okay. Dinner went on like normal and my mom was happy about it. They burned the body and even the police knew about it and they just let it happen because, superstition can kill, evidently. The next story starts off with somebody asking the guy if he can tell any stories about Dukins or Tuyuls. And this is where the guy starts off again. I've never heard of Dukins here, and I'm sure that we have a different term for them, and that's why I don't recognize them. but tuyuls I know from my Malaysian and Indonesian friends. In the Philippines, we call them tyanax, and I had an encounter with one when we moved into our new house. So a few years later, my dad actually did eventually build us the house with the help of my mom's family. It has a sheet metal roof and it's thick concrete slab walls with wooden support beams. It's really sturdy, just not very pretty. And this is the picture of it. There's no wood unless the wood supports are hidden in the roof. And I've been living a few months here. The general area is still pretty forested and real concrete roads are still here and there. I'm at the tender age of 9 now, and I'm about to start school in a few days at a nice school that's kind of local. I'm pretty hyped about being able to make friends that I'm not related to. From the moment that we move in, we befriend the neighbors and the local police. The area is sketchy because it's not super developed yet, and there's 2 roads away, and that's the jungle, more or less. But I finally have my own room. There's a big dresser and a mirror on the opposite of a small bed. The dresser is stacked with tons of stuffed toys. There's bears, some Mickey Mouse rip-offs, but there's none that are essentially human-looking. The night before school I wake up, and it's like some bad hour of the night, as always. On top of the dresser I hear whispering. It's raining hard outside, and the metal roof is loud, so I assume that they're actually talking and I'm just hearing it low. My eyes strain to adjust, but I slowly see something had replaced a toy bear. I'm scared as hell because it's twitching. I think, what the hell, man? It's small, like baby-sized. The fear makes my eyes focus properly. It has weeping eyes, red and pink skin. Its mouth is moving really fast, and its head kinda turns around like an owl's, but all the way around. I start screaming and howling as I have never felt this much fear before in my entire life. It just looked like a fat fetus. My mom runs in and turns on the lights. It immediately vanishes, and the noise it made just kinda echoes away. After that, I couldn't sleep in that room anymore. It still genuinely makes me shake because you could smell the iron in the air. It never happened again, but I heard lots of babies crying outside my window in the night for the duration of our stay there. As time went on, I eventually lived in Manila for a good while, but I only had one strange experience there to call my own, and it wasn't even that scary. My mom, though, she told me some interesting stories from her childhood in Bicol. So it's the 1970s, and this is a very rural and undeveloped area. It has no proper roads, no electricity, etc. And because there's no hospital nearby, for God knows how long people would have miscarriages and bury the fetus just out in the jungle. Because of this, when someone in the barangay gave birth, you would hear the crying of babies coming from the woods until the child was born. Another story my mom told me, and this happened to her cousin. This also took place in the 70s. Her cousin got a teaching job in a different village. To reach the town, she had to walk through a path in the jungle. She got lost, and as the sun was going down, she came across this family that was living in a hut. The family offers to let her stay the night. She accepts this because screw walking through the jungle at night and God knows what's in there. The whole family sleeps on the floor in a single-room hut. She joins them and drifts off to sleep. In the middle of the night, she wakes up to the sound of talking. She is now alone in the room besides the family's teenage daughter who is still asleep under a blanket. She creeps over to the window and peeks out and sees the family preparing a big pot, talking about killing and eating her as a sacrifice to whatever it is that they worship. She immediately gets out of there, sneaking back to the path and hurrying away. Further down the path, she hears a blood-curdling shriek, and she assumes that the family had mistook their daughter for her and killed her before realizing. And this one actually takes place in Singapore. It's a story that my ex-girlfriend, she was half Filipino, half Chinese, told me once, and this was told to her by her mom. Her family had a Filipino maid at the time, and her mom says she turned out to be an Aswang. The family had hired this maid from an agency when my ex was a baby, and she is obviously too young to remember. She was often sick and quite weak as an infant. It would often just be her and my mom and in the house alone with the maid, as the dad would be working all day, and the doctors can never figure out why she's always sick. They thought it was some kind of chronic anemia or something along those lines. The maid would often be asked to go check on my ex-girlfriend as she needed constant attention to make sure that she was okay. One day my mom walks into my ex's room while the maid was in there, and the maid was standing over the crib. She had a long, sharp tongue that she was using to pierce the skin, and it looked like she was drinking her blood. Obviously, had been taking care not to drink too much so that the baby would not die. My ex's mom chased her out with a stick and a rosary and called the police. The police could not find the maid. However, from that point on, the mom would often hear noises on their roof at night, and even caught a glimpse of a large boar. The Aswang can shapeshift into a boar. It's a pretty common form they use. And this boar was lurking around the outside of their house. And if you don't know, you don't exactly see your strange animals walking around Singapore. The boar would always disappear when they tried to look for it. My ex's mom had the house blessed by a priest, and they eventually moved out. I never saw or heard from the maid or Aswang again, and my ex was no longer constantly sick and weak after that. And this last one is told by another storyteller, but it's in the same kind of area, so here it is. I may be lacking some detail since it's been so long, but it sounds like another Aswang story. It reminds me of a lot of stories of American skinwalkers. So two Americans were on a trip on this island, I think, near Cebu. They were the outdoorsy type and just decided to go on a trek through the jungle, just the two of them, no guide. As they were hiking and talking, they started noticing something strange. Every time one of them said something, they would hear it repeated off in the distance almost immediately. At first, they thought it was just an echo of their voices, and they ignored it at first, but they soon realized that it was getting louder as time went on. Eventually, they stopped talking to each other, as they were on edge, and if they didn't talk, they wouldn't hear it. But in the silence, they could clearly hear something following them in the jungle. They were scared and it was getting dark, so they decided to climb up a tree to spend the night. In the middle of the night, they woke up to the sound of something snuffing and walking around the bottom of the tree that they were up in. They also heard mumbling, and to their absolute horror, realized that it was all fragments of conversations that they had earlier. One of them shined a light down below, and looking up at them was a large hog with a grinning, human-esque face. It didn't even try to get up the tree, it just continued doing what it was doing, circling them. They stayed up there, terrified and awake, listening to the thing imitating them until dawn. When the dawn came, it retreated out of sight and back into the jungle. And once the sun came up farther, they hurried on down the tree and were trying to get out of the jungle, but the entire time, they could still hear something following them and mimicking their voices, only stopping when they reached the safety of a small village. So, what'd you think of all those? I thought they were creepy as hell. I don't know about you. The Philippines seems to have some weird stuff going on. I liked reading about it, but I definitely don't want to experience any of that, you know. Anyways, you let me know what you think. Do you think they were all real? Do you think they were fake? Do you have any of your own experiences? If so, then you can email me, or you can donate to the channel at the email, that's the word, below in the description box. And yeah, thank you for pulling up a stump. Thank you for watching. Thank you for liking and subscribing and all that good stuff. And I shall see you in the next one. Catch you later.